The girl had no name anyone cared to remember anymore. In the capital city of Ravencroft, people simply called her the Alley Girl. She slept beneath broken archways, wrapped in a threadbare coat that smelled of rain and ash, surviving on whatever scraps she could find. Once she had been someone's daughter. Once she had believed in warmth. But those memories were thinner than the blanket she clutched each night. Every day was a quiet battle, to stay invisible, to stay alive, to stay kind in a world that punished softness. On the night the blood moon rose, the city became crueler than usual. Merchants slammed doors in her face. Drunks laughed as they kicked mud onto her dress. A group of nobles' daughters passed her near the fountain, wrinkling their noses as if she were something rotten. "Beg somewhere else," one of them sneered, tossing a copper coin that struck the girl's forehead before falling into the gutter. Blood trickled down, warm and humiliating. Still, the girl bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you." Kindness was the only thing she owned. She didn't know that the Vampire King was watching. High above the city, from the obsidian balcony of Blackspire Palace, King Alaric Nightborn observed Ravencroft with eyes older than empires. He was feared even among his own kind, an immortal ruler forged by war, loss, and centuries of betrayal. His presence alone bent lesser vampires to their knees. Humans were insects to most of his court. Fragile. Replaceable. But something below caught his attention. A human girl kneeling in the mud, bleeding, yet refusing to curse the world that hurt her. "Why does she thank them?" Alaric murmured. His generals said nothing. They did not understand mercy. Neither, truthfully, did he, until that moment. Later that night, the girl wandered toward the old cathedral ruins, a place even guards avoided. Hunger gnawed at her stomach. The moon bathed the stone in crimson light. She did not hear the monsters until it was too late. 3 shadows peeled themselves from the darkness. Feral vampires, exiles who fed without restraint. Their eyes burned with hunger. She froze, heart pounding, body trembling, yet she did not scream. Instead, she stepped between them and a smaller figure curled behind the rubble, a lost child, shaking with fear. "Please," she said softly, her voice breaking. "Take me instead." That single sentence shattered something ancient. The night exploded in wind and power. The feral vampires were ripped from the ground as if seized by the hand of a god. A figure descended between heartbeats, cloak like living darkness, eyes glowing silver blue. King Alaric stood before her, wrath incarnate. In seconds the monsters were ash scattered across sacred stone. Silence followed. Heavy. Sacred. The girl collapsed to her knees, shaking. She didn't look at him. She only checked the child, brushing dirt from his face. "You're safe now," she whispered, smiling despite her tears. Alaric stared at her as if she were something impossible. "You face death," he said, voice low and dangerous, "for someone you do not know." She finally looked up. Her eyes were dull with exhaustion but bright with sincerity. Someone should. For the first time in 300 years the Vampire King felt his heart ache. He turned away sharply, disturbed by the weakness stirring in his chest. "Come," he ordered. "Both of you." "Where?" she asked. "To my kingdom," Alaric replied. "No one will harm you again." She didn't know why the most feared being in the world had chosen her. She only knew that when he offered his hand, it was steady, protective, and warm. High above them, the blood moon burned brighter. And destiny, long asleep, opened its eyes. The gates of Blackspire Palace had never opened for a human like this. As the massive iron doors groaned apart, the homeless girl felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her. Vampires lined the hallways, nobles wrapped in velvet and silver, warriors with crimson eyes, servants frozen in disbelief. Humans entered this palace only as prisoners, or corpses. Yet she walked in alive, barefoot, her torn dress brushing against black marble floors polished by centuries of blood and power. She kept her head down. The child clung to her hand, trembling. She squeezed his fingers gently, whispering, "It's all right. Don't be afraid." Her voice echoed softly through the grand hall, fragile but unbroken. King Alaric walked ahead of them, his presence silencing every whisper. His cloak swept behind him like a living shadow. To his people he was untouchable, merciless, eternal. But with every step, his thoughts returned to the girl's words. "Take me instead." No human had ever offered their life so easily. In the throne chamber, Alaric turned sharply. "Food," he commanded. "Clean clothes. A healer for the child." Gasps rippled through the court. A pale noblewoman stepped forward, her lips curling with disdain. "My king," she said smoothly, "this creature is nothing but street filth, allowing her to breathe our air." Alaric's eyes flashed. The temperature in the room dropped so suddenly frost crept along the pillars. "Finish that sentence," he said quietly. The noblewoman fell to her knees, choking, unseen force crushing her lungs. "Forgive me," she gasped. The girl flinched. Without thinking she stepped forward. "Please, don't hurt her." Every vampire froze. Alaric stared at her in disbelief. "She insulted you." "I know," the girl said softly. "But pain doesn't teach kindness." Something cracked. The force vanished. The noblewoman collapsed, sobbing. Alaric turned away shaken, not by defiance but by mercy. "You are under my protection," he said to the girl. "No one here will touch you. Ever." She nodded, unsure why tears burned her eyes. Later that night, alone in a guest chamber larger than any home she had ever known, the girl sat on the edge of the bed, clean for the first time in years. Warm food rested untouched beside her. She wasn't hungry anymore. She was afraid. A knock echoed softly. King Alaric entered, unannounced but unarmed. Without his crown he looked less monstrous. Older. Tired. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated. I don't remember the last time someone asked." He waited. "Lyra," she finally whispered. "My mother used to call me Lyra." Alaric repeated it slowly as if tasting the sound. "Lyra." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable but heavy with things unsaid. "You could have saved yourself tonight," he said. "Why didn't you run?" She looked at him, then really looked. "Past the power. Past the fear. Because someone once ran from me," she said. "And I promised myself I wouldn't be like them." For centuries Alaric had ruled through fear. Tonight for the first time he felt shame. "You will stay," he said firmly. "Not as a prisoner. Not as a servant." "Then what?" she asked. His answer was quiet. Dangerous. Honest. "As something I will protect." Outside the blood moon began to fade. But inside the Blackspire Palace, something far older than prophecy had begun to awaken. And the court, watching from the shadows, already hated her for it. Lyra learned quickly that protection did not mean peace. Within the walls of Blackspire Palace, danger wore silk and smiles. Servants bowed too deeply. Noble vampires watched her as predators studied prey, not with hunger but with resentment. A human under the Vampire King's protection was an insult to ancient hierarchy. She felt it in every hallway, every silent meal, every whisper that stopped when she entered a room. Still she refused to shrink. Each morning she asked after the child Alaric had saved, the boy named Tomas. Though she had no authority, the healers listened to her. Though she had no status, guards stepped aside when she passed. Not because of who she was, but because of who watched her. Alaric observed from afar. From shadowed balconies and council chambers, he watched Lyra help servants lift heavy trays, thank guards by name, and sit beside Tomas for hours, telling him stories until the nightmares loosened their grip. She never demanded. Never complained. She treated monsters like people, and that unsettled the palace more than fear ever had. "You're weakening him," Lady Seraphine whispered one evening, her crimson lips close to Lyra's ear. "The king ruled for centuries without mercy. You are a flaw." Lyra met her gaze calmly. "Then maybe the world needed one." The insult spread like fire. That night, the council convened without Lyra's knowledge. Ancient laws were spoken. Traditions invoked. A human so close to the throne was dangerous, they argued. If she inspired affection, she could inspire rebellion. Their solution was simple. Test her. At dawn, guards escorted Lyra to the lower catacombs, ancient tunnels beneath the palace where failed experiments and cursed relics were buried. "The king commands it," they lied. A task of service. She knew better. Fear trembled through her chest, but she nodded. The shadows there were alive. Something followed her, breathing without lungs, whispering without mouths. When it struck, cold wrapped around her throat, dragging her into darkness. She screamed once. The palace shook. Alaric arrived in a storm of rage, tearing through stone and shadow alike. He found Lyra unconscious, frost spreading across her skin. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, cradling her close. "Who did this?" he demanded. No one answered. They didn't need to. When Lyra awoke, she was in his private chambers. His cloak covered her. His presence filled the room like a shield. "You disobeyed me," he said quietly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want to cause trouble." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they burned with something far more dangerous than anger. "They tried to kill you," he said. "Because you matter." She shook her head. "I'm just me." No, Alaric replied. You are the reason monsters hesitate. The reason I hesitate. That confession cost him more than blood. He rose and summoned the court. His judgment was swift, merciless. Exile for some, ash for others. The palace would whisper of it for centuries, the night the vampire king chose a human over his own kind. As for Lyra, she stood beside the throne, shaking but unbroken. She didn't see it yet. But ancient magic had begun to recognize her. And the crown was watching. After the night of judgment, Blackspire Palace changed. No one spoke openly against Lyra anymore, but the air had sharpened. Whispers no longer followed her, they waited for her. Even the walls seemed to listen. She felt it when she walked the corridors alone, when shadows stretched just a little too far, when ancient portraits watched her with eyes that were not painted. Alaric had ordered guards to remain near her at all times. She hated that. I don't want to be the reason people die, she told him one evening, standing on the balcony where the city lights flickered like fallen stars. You are the reason people live, he answered. They simply forgot how. Their closeness unsettled the court more than any execution. He spoke to her softly. He listened. The vampire king, who once decided wars with a glance, now paused when she frowned as if her silence mattered more than armies. That was when the dreams began. Lyra saw blood not as horror but as memory. A vast throne room bathed in red light. A crown burning with moon-carved runes. And herself, older, stronger, standing beside a shadowed king while vampires bowed not in fear but in reverence. She woke each time with her heart racing and her hands glowing faintly silver. The royal seer demanded an audience. Eldric the Veiled was older than most of the palace stones, his eyes clouded with prophecy. When he took Lyra's hand he recoiled as if burned. She carries it, he whispered. Alaric stiffened. Carries what? The echo, Eldric said, voice trembling. The blood that remembers. A lineage thought extinct. The room fell silent. She is human, one noble scoffed. Look at her. That is why she survived, Eldric replied. Long ago, before vampires ruled openly, there were humans bound to the night, not as slaves but as equals. Guardians. Queens. Their blood slept, waiting. Lyra pulled her hand back. I don't understand. Eldric bowed to her. You were never meant to kneel. That night an assassin came. Not a pharaoh. Not a noble. Something older. Something ritual-bound. It struck while Lyra tended to Tomas, a blade of shadow slicing across her palm. Blood spilled onto the stone, and the palace responded. Runes ignited along the walls. Bells rang without being touched. The shadows bent toward her like loyal beasts. Alaric arrived too late to stop the wound, but not too late to see the impossible. Her blood shimmered silver red. The assassin fled screaming, the queen has awakened. Alaric gripped Lyra's bleeding hand, his voice unsteady. What are you? She met his gaze, terrified. The same girl who thanked people for hurting her. He laughed then, soft, broken, full of awe. For centuries, he said, pressing his forehead to hers without touching, I ruled alone. And all this time, my equal was sleeping in the streets. Outside, the moon shifted behind clouds. The crown, ancient and patient, had found its other half. The palace no longer pretended. After the assassin's failure, factions formed openly. Ancient families gathered in sealed halls, whispering of balance, of tradition, of removing the threat. Lyra felt it in the way servants avoided her eyes, in how guards tightened their grip on weapons when she passed. She was no longer invisible. She was dangerous. Alaric doubled the watch. He moved her into chambers closest to his own, not for comfort but for survival. Every decision he made now carried her name in it, and the court noticed. You are risking everything, his general warned him. Your throne. Your people. Alaric's reply was quiet and final. Then they were never truly mine. Lyra overheard more than he realized. That night, she stood alone in the throne room, staring at the ancient crown resting on black stone. It pulsed faintly as if breathing. She felt it call to her, not with hunger but with recognition. I never asked for this, she whispered. The crown did not answer. But Alaric did. I know, he said from behind her. And that is why it chose you. She turned, tears streaking her face. They'll never stop. Not while I exist. They will, he said. If you accept what you are. And if I don't, she asked. Then I will burn the world to keep you human. That was when she understood. This wasn't protection anymore. This was love, terrifying, absolute, and self-destructive. Before dawn the rebels struck. The palace gates shattered. Ancient beasts bound by blood magic stormed the halls. Vampires turned on vampires. Chaos swallowed centuries of order. In the midst of it all, Lyra was dragged into the lower sanctum, chains etched with sigils biting into her skin. "You will end him," Lady Seraphine hissed, pressing a blade to Lyra's throat. "Or we will." They didn't understand. Pain ignited something deeper than fear. Lyra closed her eyes and chose. Not power. Responsibility. The chains melted. Light and shadow surged together, not violent but commanding. The rebels fell to their knees as the sanctum recognized its queen. Above, Alaric fought like a god unchained, carving through enemies until the bonds snapped across his chest, sharp, burning, alive. He felt her awaken. He reached her just as Seraphine struck. Alaric took the blade. Time stopped. Lyra screamed, not in fear but fury, and the palace answered. The rebels were disarmed, bound, judged. Justice was swift, public, final. Alaric collapsed. Lyra held him, blood soaking her hands, the same hands that once begged for scraps. "Stay with me," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open. He smiled weakly. "My queen." She pressed her forehead to his, tears falling freely. "No crown is worth you." His voice was barely there. "Then rule beside me, and make it mean something." As dawn broke, the palace knelt, not to a king alone but to a queen who had bled for mercy. And for the first time in history the night bowed to kindness.